Okay, here we are.
Good afternoon. We will just give everyone a couple of minutes here to log in. Okay, I think we can go on ahead and get started while everyone's joining us. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Mulberry Talent Partners Job Search Workshop. We're glad to have you here today. Today we are joined by Lauren Francis. She is the founder and president here at Mulberry Talent Partners, and Gigi Rosenberg, who is an accomplished public speaking coach here in Portland, Oregon. Just a quick little bit about Mulberry. We are a recruiting, temporary staffing, and executive search firm located here in Portland. We specialize in HR, professional office, financial office, payroll, and operations positions for direct hire, temp to hire, and temporary positions. Going ahead and hand it over now to Lauren for a little introduction.
Hi, everyone. My screen has gone haywire, so give me just a second here. Hold on. There we go. Okay, got you back. So nice to see everyone today. We're here and joined by Gigi Rosenberg, who I met a couple of months ago via Zoom, so we haven't met in person yet, but we've been following each other around Portland virtually. And I was so intrigued with our conversations and the work that she does that I wanted to share her wisdom and all that she brings to all of you. Gigi is speaking today about how to show up confidently online. Welcome, Gigi.
Thank you. About 10 years ago, I was asked to teach my first online workshop. And it was on a topic that I had taught many, many times before. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if you woke me up in the middle of the night, I could teach this, no problem. So I sat down at my desk at the appointed time. It was this exact desk right here. And I gave the workshop to my computer. And it was one of the worst teaching experiences I ever had because it felt like this. I felt like I was standing, this is an art pad, but I'm using it to be a wall. I felt like I was giving the presentation to a blank wall. I was talking to the blank wall. I could see nothing. I couldn't see the people. And I thought to myself, I never want to teach online again. So a few months later, the same guy that hired me to do the first one, his name was Paul. Paul called and said, I've got a new group of students. I'd like you to come in and teach the same exact thing again. And I thought, well, okay, but I don't want to myself, I said, I want to have a better experience this next time teaching online. So I've already been trained as an actor, and I thought to myself, what do I know when you can't see the audience? What do I know to do? And then I remembered, oh my goodness, this is just like when you're on the stage and the lights are so bright, you can't see the audience. What you do is you imagine that you can see the audience, or you take your best friend, who is Michelle, and you put Michelle or your best friend inside the camera lens and you give your presentation to them. So that's what I did. I gave the same exact class. And Paul called me afterwards and he said, wow, that was so much better. And I realized, oh my goodness, not only was it better for the audience with that one tiny little tweak that I did, but it was also way better for me. I felt connected because I was imagining my audience through my best friend, Michelle, who I put in the camera lens. The reason I open with that story is because what I want you to do after our time is up today is to leave with several of those kinds of tips, things you can do to make your online experience just so much better for you and to help you feel and also come across in a much more confident way. Thank you for being here. I know that we all have a lot going on right now. So just for the 30 minutes that we're together today, what I would suggest that you do is take all your worries, take all those emails you need to answer and everything else that's on your mind and just shove it aside the desk right now and just be here fully. You know, sometimes one of the problems with being in an online meeting is we're sitting at our desk with so many distractions. So what I do is I put Zoom on full screen. I close all my apps so they're not even open behind the full screen. I hide my phone. Right now it's across the room. I only had it just in case I couldn't get connected. I put a sign on my door that says, I'm recording, do not disturb. And I find that I'm just able to stay much, much more focused. Because if I start answering emails or think, oh, you know, let me check this, check that, there's no way I can be listening. And then somebody says something amazing. I'm like, oh my God, what'd they say? I missed it. I'm Gigi Rosenberg, and I'm a public speaking coach. And I work with executives, nonprofit leaders, and also women on the rise to help them present both online and in person with authenticity, authority, and also a sense of warmth. So thank you for joining me today. So if you want to get out a pen and paper to take some notes, you absolutely can. I would recommend that over writing on your computer, just so you just stay as least involved with your computer as possible. But I do have this awesome, cool list that'll include a lot of the tips. I just got this from the printer and I'm very, very proud of it. It will include a lot of the tips I'm going to give you today that you can download from my website. We'll talk about that later. So that's the long way of saying if you don't want to take notes, you can easily access something in writing. So let's start with whether you're leading an online or showing up for an interview or just even participating in an online meeting, how you can show up and really look and sound your best. The better you look, the better you sound, the more confident you're going to feel. Some people call these my vanity tips. And I don't like calling them vanity tips because, well, okay, a couple of them are vanity tips. I'll tell you which one those are. But, you know, how can you be confident if people can't see you or hear you? It's way more important than just vanity. So the basics are, and some of you may know this, but I have to say I've been attending many online meetings, as I'm sure you have, and I see hundreds of people not doing the basics. So I just want to review the basics just in case. So there's three basics. One is raise your computer so that you're basically looking right across into the camera lens. Number two is light your face, and I just have a cheap old lamp right here on that side, lighting my face. That's all I'm doing. And the third thing is use any kind of microphone. You definitely do not need a fancy one like I have, but even the microphone that came on your earbuds is going to be better than the microphone that's on your computer. The computer sound is just very hollow, and this will sound way better. And then even a better microphone will sound way better. So any kind of microphone. In terms of some advanced things you can do is think about how you're framing yourself. One thing you want to do is have your eyes about 2/3 of the way up your screen and think about what's in the screen. You want to have some shoulders in there because it's great to see, you know, one of the problems with online is we don't have most of our body there. So you want to have some body in there. You also, I'm a person who talks with my hands, obviously. It's great to talk with your hands. The more of your body you can get in the screen, the better. What you want to avoid, and I have seen this, is this, so that you're way down here, cutting yourself off, or like this on the side. So, you know, right in the middle. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of people are not turning their cameras on. And I know sometimes if I've got an early morning meeting and, you know, my eyes are puffy and I don't look my best, I don't want to turn my camera on either. But one thing you can do is if you want to be engaged enough to turn your camera on, but don't want to have your face so big in the frame, is you can sit back or stand back if you're standing. And I'm so much smaller now in the screen than I am when I'm here. So I would definitely consider that an option. If you want to do some super easy, more advanced lighting things, I told you about the lamp thing, but this tip I read, this is Tom Ford, the fashion guy, tip about lighting. What you want to do is get some white paper. The perfect size is about 11 by 14. And I'm going to use my art pad to demo this. And you want to take the paper and you want to put it right below you, and you get some very nice bounce back up on your face. And somebody I know who does film told me that a lot of the times when they're filming an actress in a close-up, they'll have her just have like a white towel on her lap just to do some bounce on your face. So I would definitely recommend that. I'm not keeping this here because it's covering my notes. But it's a great, easy thing to do for looking a little better. My one vanity tip is, don't do this now, but after we get off the call, you can go into Zoom options, the video options, and you'll find those under your preferences, I think. Anyway, if you go under the video options, you'll see this. And there's one option that's called Touch Up My Appearance. Now, Lauren has never seen me in person, so she doesn't know how much it's touched me up. But you'll just have to trust me. I look like this in person, but what it does, the Touch Up My Appearance just softens you ever so slightly. And if we're all of us who are of a certain age, which basically means over 20, it can only help. The next thing that's super important is your eye contact. Where are you going to look? And what's very hard is to keep looking at the lens because there's not a face there. So you can imagine Michelle or your best friend in the lens and give the talk to them. You don't have to stare at the lens the entire time because obviously you're going to be looking at your notes. You will check down on the faces of the other people or if you have slides there to look at. But you really do want to have the camera lens be your home base. So you're always looking back there. Another thing you could do is put a little Post-it there with a smiley face or a little arrow just to remind yourself that's where you're supposed to look. In terms of your voice, one thing I've noticed is this sometimes happens in a professional meeting on Zoom where people are going around giving their elevator speeches. Now the elevator speech, your introduction is something that you give a lot. So to you, it's getting a little boring, right? So I will give you my elevator speech, my introduction said as a boring list, as an example of what not to do. So just listen to this. I'm Gigi Rosenberg. I'm a public speaking coach. I work with executives, nonprofit leaders, women on the rise. You see how there's like this like sing-song quality to my voice and I sound bored? I mean, I know I'm exaggerating, but it's just to make a point. Obviously, I know my own introduction. And if I keep saying it over and over again, it's going to start to sound boring. You want to say your introduction like it's the most fresh thing you've just said. It's just completely brand new. So if you find yourself getting stuck in that sort of sing-song voice, the way to break it is to have a regular conversation where you hear your voice go up and down as it normally does. And then it breaks that pattern. And then what I do actually with my introduction is I specifically don't memorize it, but I've got the order of it down. So I know I start with my name, then I say my title, then I say my audience, and then I say what I do for my audience. So I've got that. And then, I might change it up a teeny bit as I go through it, just so it doesn't sound like a robotic memorized list, because I've noticed that a lot when people are introducing themselves. The other thing that I really wanted to mention today is sometimes when you're feeling insecure, and I've noticed this in people of all ages and all genders, but it's especially people who are younger, but I've even noticed it in older people. It's where you can start to turn everything into a question, which sounds like your voice continually goes up at the end of everything you say. So if you start hearing that, you just want to remember, don't ask questions unless it's a question, make statements. So that can be a good way to turn that around. And when I work privately with coaching clients, sometimes we'll work on that. Or when I hear it, I'll stop and say, okay, say that again, but say it as a statement, not as a question. I hope that makes sense.
Gigi?
Yes.
You mentioned we could interrupt, or I could anyway.
Yes, I love being interrupted.
Could you give an example of what you just said, of what you just talked about? Okay, thanks.
So I'm Gigi Rosenberg. I'm a public speaking coach. I work with executives. I work with nonprofit leaders. You see what I mean? It's all a question. So what I would do is, I'm Gigi Rosenberg. I'm a public speaking coach. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but you know, just to get into the state, I'm making a statement, I'm not asking a question. This is very, 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 very common. It's amazing. Now, one of the reasons we do it makes sense. Like if I were asking Lauren, like saying something, but I meant like, oh, do you want to have sushi for lunch? You know, like, you know, so if there's a question that's fine to raise your, or I would say, oh, do you know that place? It's on the corner of such and such. You know, I'm sort of it's a way we check in with each other, you know, like, do you get what I'm saying? And so doing it every once in a while is fine. It just, if it becomes a habit, it makes you come across as like you're unsure, like you don't know your name, like you don't know your title. You know, so some things you always want to say as, you know, as a statement. I wanted to remind, or I didn't actually tell you, so I can't remind you, but just to tell you, if you have questions in the next couple of minutes, we're going to open the floor to questions. So please, I already forgot if we're supposed to put them, no, we're supposed to put them in the Q&A. So please write them into the Q&A because I would absolutely love to hear your questions. So I want to give you a couple of other tips before we open for questions, but then we will. So the other thing that I'm doing right now that you might have noticed is I'm standing up, and I really recommend standing up. One of the things it does for you is it gives you automatically way more energy. Because in this format, in any format, especially even live, there's nothing more compelling than a lot of energy, and you will automatically have more energy if you're standing up. The other thing it does is you can breathe deeper when you're standing up. You can do the belly breath, which is basically just taking a breath so deeply that if your hand is on your belly, which mine is right now, that you will push your hand out and then deep, slow exhale. It will also really, really relax you. So I really, really recommend standing. We talked about using your hands. I do give, you know, if I'm leading a meeting as I am today, I do definitely encourage people to do everything I said at the beginning. So if you're leading a meeting, it's great just to give people directions on how they can stay focused. And one of the advanced tips that I'm not actually doing now, but I want to show you what happens when you don't, is I don't have non-reflective coating on my glasses. So if I tip my glasses up, you see how bad that reflection is? So I'm going to get non-reflective glasses as soon as I can get out of the house and do that. Lastly, sometimes what happens with people's faces, especially when they're feeling nervous, is they can look very grim. So when my face is not talking, I'm channeling the Mona Lisa smile, which is a very, very, very subtle smile on my face. And it makes actually a huge difference in how I feel because it takes away that grim look right away. And if I'm looking for a button and I start to get worried, you don't want the audience, you know, the audience will see your worried, anxious face and they'll start to feel worried and anxious. So you just want to relax your face, look for the button, but not be like, where's the button? You know, because that can just really, it'll make your audience feel upset, which is the last thing that you want to do. And I would channel as much warmth and delight as you possibly can, because in this format, it's rare that there's too much warmth and delight in anyone's performance. So that's just a very, very compelling, you know, express your excitement at saying hello to somebody, express your warmth at saying goodbye to somebody. So just so we have time, why don't we open up to questions now? I know that we have some that already came in, and I will wait to hear them.
Thank you, Gigi. This is amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen once again. We had some questions that came in ahead of time, but if anyone has questions that have come up, it looks like there are a couple. We'll be sure to answer those as well. So this first question is, if you're interviewing via Zoom/Teams, how should you dress? Any recommended clothing, attire, colors, or backgrounds for optimal conversations?
Great. So, you know, I know we're all getting extremely casual. I mean, I'm in yoga pants pretty much all day, you know. I am not in yoga pants now, though. I'm in real pants and the boots I'd be wearing. I know it's kind of a hot day, but I'm in my boots because that is an outfit that makes me feel confident, even if you can't see it, you know, really below my shoulders. So I would definitely say dress the way you would dress if you were going to be meeting this group or this person in person. In terms of colors, what I've been told by a stylist whose name is Scarlett Chamberlain is to wear jewel colors. So I attempted with my bright blue top today to wear a jewel color. I would avoid whites and blacks. I would definitely avoid anything with a very tiny, like pinstripe or little things that can start to move on video. But just solid, bright colors is a great way to go. The other thing Scarlett mentioned and I thought was so interesting was one cool thing you can do is you can have, if you have a top that's, she called it a statement collar. I am not wearing a statement collar now, but she showed some very cool tops that had, just some interesting things going up on the collar. I think it's a great time to wear nice, bold jewelry. And one thing she said that you would want to avoid is something that was cut so low that you're showing skin and it kind of, there's all you see is skin, because it starts making the viewer think, oh, where does that end or what's going on down there? And you definitely don't want the person to be thinking about what's out of the frame. So I thought those were interesting as well. But again, dress as if you would dress to see somebody in person. So I hope that answers that question. Oh, do we talk about backgrounds? Let's talk about backgrounds for just 2 seconds. I would recommend that if you have to use a virtual background, go ahead. I would just use something very, very, very simple. If you can avoid it, that would be, I think, even better, because sometimes they can cut off parts of you that look a little weird. And supposedly our brains have to work harder and we get a little more tired when we're looking at a lot of virtual backgrounds. So if you can show your background, great. I've also seen people get away with just having behind them like a folding screen, and you can do that as well. But if you can show your background, even better.
Great. Okay, this next question is how to show that you're listening with intent.
I think that's a great question because, one of the weird things about this format is these time lags. Like, did you hear me? Did you get that? Do I have to repeat it? Very, very weird. So one thing I've been doing a lot of is the head nod. So I'm like, because if they can see me, they can see my head nodding. And, the other thing I've been finding is all our skills are getting better with Zoom. So we're a little less weirded out at the pauses. We're just more easy to kind of hang in there with the pause. Did you hear me? Do I need to say that again? That kind of thing. So, but the showing that you're listening, I think the head nod is a great thing to do. I'm somebody that I've actually been criticized. I'm the kind of person that when you're talking to me, I do this, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Uh-huh. And it can make people feel like I'm rushing you along. I'm really doing it because I want you to know I'm listening. So every once in a while, I might add in uh-huh if I feel like they can't see me or they need more than just the visual. Okay, you want to ask the next question? Lord, I think you just unmuted yourself.
I was just saying the Q&A is blocking mine. So can you see the question? Gigi, you can take that one on.
Oh yeah, I struggle with chuckling. Yeah, I struggle with chuckling or trailing off a bit to switch gears in conversations. This is particularly noticeable in video. I'm concerned it causes me to come off as less professional than I intend and would appreciate any suggestions for combating this tic. Thank you. So I struggle with chuckling or trailing off a bit. So let's talk about chuckling. I happen to be a nervous laugher. When I was younger, I'm not saying I only laugh nervously because I think a lot, sometimes I think a lot of things are funny, but I can be a nervous laugher. So one thing I do, like I can, and I think a lot of women do this especially, is we'll say something and then we'll laugh. As if we were like, uh-oh, maybe that sounded too strong. Let me soften the ending with a laugh. I think the only thing to do there, and for me, I'm still working on that. And I do it when I'm nervous or I feel like, oh, maybe I should try to be a little softer. So is just to notice it, and as much as possible, when you can feel the urge coming up to laugh at the end, to just not laugh at the end. And it's a practice, and it's going to be, sometimes it can be a lifelong practice. So that's the chuckling. The second thing, the trailing off a bit, I think it's important to get in the habit of making statements and then stop talking. It's what you learn in how to do a negotiation. So make the offer and then shut up and stop talking. And sometimes it can be very, very hard to stop talking. We want to keep going to soften things. So I think step one is just working on your awareness. When am I laughing? What happened right before? Why was I laughing? And then, or why was I sort of trailing off and not just stopping, and just practice. And I would practice in lower stress situations. So practice when you're talking to a friend, not when you're in some high stakes negotiation as the first time. Or notice and then just keep expanding. That's basically when I work with my one-on-one coaching clients, that's what we do. They practice with me, and then I give them assignments. They go out in the world, they try it, they come back, and then we talk about it.
Great. Now I can see my screen. So any advice on how to feel comfortable with the perceived barriers to communication that technology presents? This attendee feels that it's a lot harder to read body language over calls like Zoom and meetings.
It is a lot harder to read body language. It's totally true. It's why I'm encouraging you to have a little more of your body in. So I'm assuming that this question is all about, somebody looks grouchy, somebody looks angry, somebody looks confused. If I don't know the person well, I would just say, does that make sense? Or do you understand what I just said? Or do I need to say that a different way? So I would check in with, did they understand? If I knew somebody very well and they looked mad, I'd say, oh, are you mad? I wouldn't say that to someone I didn't know. So I would just more boldly check in with somebody, whatever the appropriate question is, to just, especially when you pick up something, because we can imagine all kinds of things, and then you find out that they don't feel well, or they have a stomach ache, or something is going on in the background, or a million things that you can't even see. So I think checking in with people is really the best thing to do when you think there's some glitch in the communication, because it might not be there, or it might be something other than what you imagine.
Right. Okay, just looking at the time here, it looks like it's 12:28, so I'm going to go on ahead and wrap up the questions, I think. Thank you for answering all of those, Gigi.
Yeah. Are there any in the Q&A or in the chat? I mean, in the Q&A that you want to?
Let's see, do a quick one. A lot of these were covered. You answered, yes to use a microphone, talked about background. One person did ask, in working with your clients, what did you find to be major things or things to correct? If you could answer that in a minute or less.
Yeah, so let's see, major things to correct. I mean, most people seek me out because they feel scared and nervous. So we work on all kinds of things, but it really depends on what makes them scared, So I'll have them, practice things in lower stake situations, and then we'll expand from there. We'll do some of the breathing things that everyone's like, oh, I don't want to do this breathing, but then they do it and it's like, oh, I feel so much more relaxed. So, so those are the two major ones I can work on. And then because I'm a writer, we also work on content, because sometimes it's really like what you're talking about doesn't make any sense, or there's not, the transitions are missing, or there's not a good open. I'll just use one example. Like today, when I started, I don't know if you noticed, but when I started right in on a story. I told you a story about how I didn't like presenting online, rather than even thanking Lauren, which I'll do now. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kayla. Because the thank yous at the beginning, they're boring, so you want to start like right out of the gate. So we'll work a lot on content. I do blog a lot. I make videos. So if you want to reach out to me, please come to gigirosenberg.com. It'll come up in the slide. And like I said, I'm going to be putting this on my homepage soon as a download. So if you sign up for my list, you'll get the announcement as soon as that's up. So thank you so much. Please reach out if you have more questions.
Will do. And we'll share Gigi's contact information in an email that we'll send out a little later, or actually early next week. So Mulberry Talent Partners does these webinars every other Thursday, 12 to 12:30. We have some really great ones coming up. They're listed here. And then now that you've signed up with us through this webinar, you'll get invitations every week. And then this just last slide is all of our contact information. So connect to us on LinkedIn. Send us an email if you have any specific questions. And thank you all for joining us today.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.